For more on all of this, I'm joined by Florida Democratic Representative Stephanie Murphy. She's also a member of the January 6th committee. Congresswoman Murphy, thank you for your time today. We've watched as this former White House aide testified that former President Trump knew full well people were armed at his rally at the Ellipse on January 6th. Let's just listen to a portion of the testimony.
He was told again in that conversation, or was he told again in that conversation, that people couldn't come through the mags because they had weapons?
Correct.
And that people, his response was to say they can march to the Capitol from the Ellipse.
Something to the effect of, take the effing mags away, they're not here to hurt me, let them in, let my people in, they can march to the Capitol after the rally's over, they can march from the Ellipse, take the effing mags away, then they can march to the Capitol.
That portion of the testimony really striking people. Hutchinson also detailed a number of things which could effectively rise to the level of criminal prosecution, not just pushing to relax security for protesters known to be armed, but assaulting a Secret Service agent. Ultimately, do you feel that is where this hearing is headed?
Where the committee is headed is to gather all of the facts, lay them out for the American people, and then provide legislative recommendations on how we better secure the Capitol as well as our democracy. I think what Ms. Hutchinson did today was she took us inside the White House in the remaining days before January 6th and on January 6th to let us know what the president knew and when. And it's clear that he knew that he had called supporters to Washington, that they were armed, but he wasn't worried that they were a threat to him. And yet still he sent them to the Capitol. And then when he knew that the Capitol was under attack, he didn't do anything about it. And I think, the important thing to understand about this is that the January 6th attack on the Capitol was not a spontaneous event. It was part of a months-long effort for the sitting president to try to retain power when he knew he had lost and had been told he had lost.
What was your just personal reaction as an American when you first learned of this testimony, the behavior of a sitting president refusing to accept the loss that the public gave him?
As an American, I was deeply disappointed, but as a person who was a refugee from a country that did not have democracy, I was very scared. I know how fine of a line it is between a country that is a democracy until it isn't. And it takes every American citizen and good elected officials of good character to defend our Constitution and to do what's right. And we have seen a lot of Republicans testify in front of this committee who have said when they were asked to help him cheat to win, they felt that their oath to the Constitution was greater than that request, and they did what was right.
And so you said the committee's laying out just the case and the kind of facts as they are. What outcome do you think would be appropriate?
I think the right outcome is for us to look at all the ways in which the president tried to subvert our processes and try to better create guardrails against future electeds who try to do the same thing. In a democracy, we should not have anyone other than the people decide who gets to be president. And I think we came dangerously close in this situation. You saw the president pressure the Department of Justice to find election fraud where there was not. You saw the president pressure state electors to put forward fake electors when they knew the president had not won. And you saw the president pressure the vice president to just call the race in his favor. And luckily, in all of those cases, those people resisted that pressure.
Now, this hearing comes after your fellow committee member, Representative Raskin, said the committee's received, quote, a deluge of new evidence since it's been holding these hearings. Characterize some of what we may see and hear next.
Our investigation is fluid. We are constantly receiving additional information. And as you heard the chairman say today in the hearing, we invite folks who may have had some memory lapses when they came in front of us, or may have information that they have yet to present, or who have to date decided not to cooperate with the committee. We invite them to come and speak with the committee and share what they know. Our door is wide open, and we will be sharing the information that we gather with the American people in a way that I hope is digestible, and in a way that I hope they'll be able to set aside their partisan affiliations and just see the facts for what they are, and also want to guard our country against any future elected leader from trying to hold on to power in ways that are unconstitutional and potentially corrupt.
We've also been hearing what sounds like potential witness tampering. Congresswoman Liz Cheney detailing some of that at the end of today's hearing, which often has been a tease to what we will hear next. What can you tell us on that front?
What I will say is that we do ask many of our witnesses as to whether or not they have received outreach and pressure that would interfere with the way that they testify in front of our committee. We take these concerns very seriously, and as the Vice Chair said, we plan on having a conversation as a committee to determine what we will do next about it. But it is a serious, serious effort to disrupt the committee's work, and we take that seriously.
It's interesting, too, just as someone on the outside watching this, that you are actively trying to gather new evidence from more people while noting that there is an effort, it seems, to make sure witnesses stay loyal to the former president. I also want to ask just more questions about you. You've announced that you will not be seeking re-election. You've alluded to your personal story, something that seems to be relevant in this climate as far as the value of democracy. What went into your decision? And what would you like for folks to remember about your time in service? And why are you doing this?
I'm a working parent, like so many working parents all across this country, and sometimes you have to balance your personal responsibilities with your professional aspirations. But I hope that the American people will remember that in some of our darkest moments here as a nation, that I gave my best to her.
Representative Stephanie Murphy, thank you very much for your time today.
Great to be with you.